Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into a really fascinating topic. It sort of bridges ancient wisdom with some cutting edge, well, speculation. Primary darkness.
Hmm.
You might have noticed modern scientists are finally starting to talk about concepts like dark energy. It's in the news, right? But what if ancient traditions actually held clues to this really profound phenomenon all along? So our mission today is to unpack a fascinating set of sources. These explore the very origins, the very nature of this primary darkness. We'll look at how ancient seers encountered it, how it seems to underpin, everything we perceive as light, and what it all means for our own awareness.
Yeah, it's really compelling stuff. The source material, it really invites us, pushes us to consider a reality far beyond our everyday perception. It suggests that what we usually think of as darkness might actually be, well, the fundamental fabric of the universe. So, yeah, this deep dive, it's definitely going to challenge some assumptions, offers a truly unique perspective, I think.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Get ready for some truly mind-bending concepts, some surprising insights as we take a deep dive into this primal void. All right, so we start with this idea that ancient mages, wizards, even warriors, they were familiar with this dark energy way before modern science, right? But how? I mean, how did they even encounter it? What did they actually find, beyond the usual human band of perception?
Well, connecting this to the bigger picture, the sources tell us, these ancient practitioners, through really intense conscious self-transformation and by shifting their assemblage point, which the text described as like the focus point of our perception. They discovered this vast volume of dark energy. They called it self-energy sometimes. It surrounded what they termed the central stream, the core energy flow. They were actively looking for new ways to perceive, beyond the ordinary.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting for me anyway. The sources claim the Earth's energy flows were different back then. Different how? And that this difference meant those ancient seers couldn't discover everything that we, meaning the modern experiencers in the source, later did. What's that about?
That does raise a big question, doesn't it? What happens when you actually try to perceive something that fundamental? And initially, this primary darkness, it was a huge challenge. Like early attempts to perceive it, they led to immediate loss of attention. It would just pull experiencers right out of dreaming states. The sources say it sucked in energy and kind of magnetized everything. Very powerful.
Right, so for years it was just labeled the unknowable. That's a term folks might know from Carlos Castaneda's work. It became this sort of unspoken rule, didn't it? A taboo by default, almost. Avoid it, don't engage, or you'll lose energy. But, as the source tells it, experience just kept accumulating. They couldn't ignore it forever. And eventually they found it. Found this primary darkness could be located right inside your own cocoon, inside your personal energy field.
Inside the cocoon, that luminous energy field around us.
Okay, let's get into a specific experience now. A really mind-bending, dreaming experience that's detailed in our source material. So picture this. You're in a space of just absolute darkness. How do you even begin to perceive that without just, dissolving, losing yourself completely?
It took profound effort. The sources are clear on that. Just gazing upon this darkness required willful effort. Without that focus, it would just suck out energy. Simple as that. The breakthrough apparently came when the experiencer managed to shift perspective, began to become the darkness itself, experiencing it from the inside, sort of, as heavy, enormous, shapeless.
Heavy, enormous, shapeless. So this vast darkness had all this power, but it couldn't perceive itself, because it had no center and no boundaries.
The cosmic paradox, exactly. It lacked a reference point.
What could possibly give it one? How does something like that start to become aware?
And that's the really fascinating part. The sources point to the role of a small individual part, meaning the experiencer's own sense of I, their individual awareness. That tiny fragment.
Just a tiny spark.
Just a tiny spark, yeah. But it provided this small push, enough to allow the immense dark mass to think simultaneously, to gain a kind of self-reference.
Wow. And the result of that?
Yeah.
That monumental thought.
It became the primary Nagual, which the source describes as a single, large field, multidimensional, deep, colorful thought.
So the insight is, individual awareness, even a small bit, isn't just watching. It can actually catalyze consciousness in the universe's most fundamental stuff. Give it a center.
That seems to be the core idea presented, yes.
Yeah.
A catalyst for self-awareness in the void. Okay, so once this primary Nagual emerged, it opened up new possibilities for exploration, according to the sources. They discovered this primary darkness wasn't just, a uniform emptiness. It was contained within distinct pools. And these pools had boundaries, often described as rectangular.
Rectangular pools of primary darkness.
Oh, okay.
But the boundaries, they caused problems.
They did, a new challenge. The experiencers and their companions, including these entities called the dark seas of awareness.
Which are like vast collective consciousness fields.
Right. They found themselves caught by the barrier, stuck, couldn't break through it easily. It just held and didn't let go. They tried all sorts of energetic techniques to pierce it, but nothing seemed to work initially.
So why was it so hard? What was the trick?
Well, the insight they gained was, almost comically simple in hindsight. They just needed to direct their attention upwards, literally in the opposite direction of the primary darkness they were focused on.
Just look up.
Essentially, yes. Shift the focus up, and as soon as they did, the barrier just released them. Let them go.
Oh, that's simple.
Yeah.
So what happened then after they broke free?
They ascended, moved upwards, and found this immense field. Hundreds upon hundreds of these pools, like a whole landscape of them.
Wow. And were they all the same?
No, some contained active primary Naguals, these self-aware dark fields who apparently seemed joyful at their presence. Others were just empty? Dormant, maybe?
Okay, but the real aha moment,
Hmm.
what was that?
It came from gazing at these pools, looking at the collection of them. That perspective allowed them to perceive something new. The energy of crystals in our cocoons, and crucially, it let them see primary darkness inside the cocoon.
So seeing it out there helped them see it in here.
Exactly. And this significantly shortened the time to move into primary darkness, made the whole process faster, more direct.
That's a major shift.
It really is. And connecting this to the bigger picture, the implications are profound. The sources state that all living creatures, any light, consists of this primary darkness.
But light consists of darkness. How does that work?
Light is described as being clothed by primary darkness, but the light itself lacks depth. It's like the surface layer. Apparently, when you gaze deeply into light, really focus, it transforms. It goes from being bright threads to denser fibers, then to sort of matte colors. And finally, your attention just plunges through the light into the primary darkness itself. It leads you right into its pool.
So darkness is the foundation, even for light. Okay, another really striking discovery they made. Rising above these pools of primary darkness, they encountered microscopic bubbles. Bubbles of what?
Bubbles of understanding and awareness ascending upwards, like little packets of insight rising.
And then even higher.
Higher still, yeah. A field of these huge, conscious, brightly red, plasma-like ellipses. They also call them rugby balls, metaphorically speaking.
Rugby balls, okay.
Yeah.
And this field, this entity.
They termed it the chief laboratory assistant.
The chief laboratory assistant, what is that?
It was perceived as, well, the most intelligent, most concentrated, most conscious energy they had ever encountered, period. Apparently, it made even those vast, dark seas of awareness seem like, the source uses the phrase, half-witted idiots in comparison.
Wow, okay. So super intelligent, and its function.
Its fundamental function, they figured out, is to cultivate awareness.
To grow consciousness on a cosmic scale.
Precisely. Actively fostering and developing awareness.
So how does it do that? How does this chief laboratory assistant cultivate awareness?
It manages different kinds of primary darkness pools. Remember the rectangular ones?
Yeah, the ones with the tricky barriers.
Right. Well, there are other types too. Round ones like nested rings, sort of like Russian dolls. And these round ones are described as a nutritive medium for a specific type of awareness.
Nutritive medium. Like soil for consciousness.
That's a good way to put it. And in these, the developing awareness doesn't face hard barriers, but rather has to overcome varying densities, different levels of resistance within the medium.
Okay, so it's a different kind of challenge. But how do you even interact with something like that? The chief laboratory assistant, I mean. It sounds immense.
It is, and the source details this really complex process. It's about building yourself into its structure. Energetically speaking, it involves creating these elliptical volumes within yourself, inserting capsules of your own awareness, even fitting your own dark sea of awareness into one of these capsules. It's like aligning your energy signature.
Becoming part of its network.
Exactly, like merging onto a highway. These capsules then extend wide, long ribbons of energy, and then they get ignited with awareness to fully integrate into the chief laboratory assistant's flow. It's a profound energetic reconfiguration.
The scale of this, it's hard to grasp. The chief laboratory assistant's task sounds enormous.
Immense. And get this. Despite its incredible power and intelligence, this entity itself is described as just a tiny orange spot.
Tiny compared to what?
Compared to the much larger mass it's working with. maybe only 1% of the total mass it's part of. That larger mass is described as a gigantic passive mass of dark energy, like a large donut or a dirty-colored bubbly mass.
So the assistant is like a tiny active point trying to, what, activate this huge inert thing.
That seems to be its colossal challenge, yes, to bring awareness to this vast passive energy.
What are the implications of having all that unactivated energy just sitting there?
Well, there's a word of caution in the sources about that. This unactivated dark energy isn't just inert. It's not harmless. It can apparently generate unstable awarenesses, like fragments or dark clumps.
Dark clumps, and what do they do?
They're attracted to active, bright cocoons, especially in dreams. They gravitate towards light and energy.
Okay, that sounds potentially problematic. What's the advice?
The advice is crucial, especially for you, the listener. If you explore dreaming, if you encounter these shifting dark forms, the instruction is gaze at them, do not fight them.
Gaze at them, not fight.
Right. Because fighting them, using your own glowing energy against them, actually creates the very conditions that hold them in contact with you. It feeds the connection and can be really draining. Gazing allows them to pass, apparently.
Okay, so interacting with primary darkness, with these higher entities, it has consequences. Both good and bad, it sounds like. The source gives this interesting anecdote about a group member who tried to sculpt things out of primary darkness, like giant plants and beings, treating it like clay.
Yeah, like an energetic artist, right. It sounds incredibly powerful.
It does. But was there a downside? Did that kind of power cause unforeseen issues?
There was a catch. While it was a demonstration of power, the sources say it ultimately filled primary darkness with strange moving forms. It basically created noise, interference. It actually hindered the group's overall progress, maybe too much power used without full understanding.
Okay. So that led to another approach.
Yes, another attempt to kind of ignite our pool of darkness, but this time by projecting the chief laboratory assistant's energy, those fiery ellipses into it.
Right. And did that work? Did it lessen the darkness?
Not exactly lessen it. The projection happened, but the source describes how everything we created there clung to us. Like a magnet.
Clung to them.
Yeah.
So the creations became attached.
Yeah. This interaction, which started as a step forward in dreaming, eventually became a kind of burden, heavy baggage, energetically speaking.
But this deep interaction, even with its burdens, it led somewhere important, didn't it?
It did, a really significant development. They gained a new sponsor.
A sponsor, like cosmic funding.
Essentially, yeah. This sponsor provides massive subsidies of magical fast energy, really high-octane stuff for deeper exploration. First, this energy came from the dark sea of awareness, and then later, directly from the chief laboratory assistant, like getting upgraded grants.
That's fascinating. And this sponsorship came with conditions, right? Particularly about knowledge.
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting for how information is managed at these levels. The condition was all knowledge gained through this sponsored exploration has to be uploaded first to the chief laboratory assistant.
Before they even fully process it themselves.
Well, before it goes anywhere else. First to the chief lab assistant, then it gets passed down to the dark sea of awareness.
Okay, why? Why this complex two-step transfer system? It sounds like cosmic bureaucracy.
Maybe a little. But the reason given is profound. The sheer volume of knowledge, the sheer intensity of the experience gained at these higher levels, it's just too much for the physical body. The source says you'd literally burn out from the inside and it won't fit. Your physical system can't contain it all directly.
So you can't just know it in the normal sense.
Not in its entirety. The source says to perceive these higher levels, you have to become that something. You merge with it. So the vast, detailed knowledge gets stored externally in these higher structures. Only a tiny copy of memories is made for the individual.
Just a copy.
Yeah, and that copy is then reduced again for what they call a small petal of the dark sea of awareness associated with the individual. And then an even smaller copy of that is what you actually wake up with. Just enough to recall the core insight, the essence, without being overwhelmed.
Wow. So it's like a multi-layered compression system for cosmic knowledge.
Exactly. Highly efficient, protecting the individual while preserving the essential learning.
Okay, delving even deeper. Our sources describe another structure, an energetic torus, like a donut shape, right?
A torus. And within it, there's this strange formation.
Which they called the managing mushroom.
Yes, or, as the source candidly puts it at one point, the managing penis. quite evocative names.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So what is this thing? What's its nature?
Its nature is,
Yeah,
well,
okay.
there's a rising vortex going through the center of this torus, and trying to approach this central formation as a primary Nagual. Remember, that self-aware field of darkness.
Yeah.
It was described as lethal. It apparently killed the experiencer, energetically speaking, hundreds of times.
Hundreds of times. That sounds intense. But they managed it eventually.
Eventually, yes. They couldn't force it. They had to find a way to sort of seep into it and become it. Integration, not confrontation.
Okay, so they became this managing entity. What was that like? What does it do?
Its sole sensation, its entire mode of being, is described as control and attention.
Control and attention.
Yes, but not like a person pulling levers. It perceives everything within the torus, all the energy patterns, as glowing irregularities. And its function is simply to ensure these irregularities are harmonically distributed, balanced.
So it doesn't decide to control things.
No, it is the balance. It embodies the harmonic distribution of those irregularities.
Yeah.
It's a self-regulating cosmic mechanism ensuring equilibrium within its domain.
Right, I see. It is the pattern.
Precisely. Which leads to this fundamental question. If there's always this pressure, this structure, these systems, where does true freedom lie? Is there an escape from the system?
Yeah, if everything is about balance and control within the torus,
Yeah.
what's outside?
The source offers a pretty powerful answer here. It says, freedom is beyond the limits of this ring torus.
Beyond it.
Outside that structure. It's described as the complete absence of pressure. Just absolute freedom. A state with no emanations, no structures imposing themselves, pure potential maybe.
Wow. Absolute freedom beyond the known structures. That leads us towards the really big question, doesn't it? The meaning of existence itself.
Right, and the source tackles this head-on. It states the meaning is not banal, not simple, and definitely not all unambiguous. It's complex.
But it does offer a direction.
It does. It emphasizes that every living being has a contract.
A contract to do what?
To gain experience. Specifically, experience in controlling the universe, building the universe.
Building the universe. That's a big contract.
It is. And it describes a journey through stages. You start with basic physical interaction with energy. The source even mentions killing and dying as part of this raw learning phase. Then you move towards understanding more stable, long-lasting programs, using biological life as a framework for learning. Then you progress to investigating how your life is structured, looking at the deeper patterns.
The code behind the experience?
Kinda, yeah. And ultimately, this path reveals a large awareness as the basis of the universe.
Yeah.
Your personal awareness starts to intertwine with this vast universal awareness. You begin to see how everything is connected.
And the final stage.
The final stage, which seems to lie beyond even these complex systems, beyond the bubble, as the source calls it, is to create universes yourself.
To become a creator.
That's the ultimate potential described, moving from experiencer to builder to creator.
The sources also get into some practicalities like the creation of human beings. Obviously, there's the biological sexual act, but energetically. What else is involved, according to these texts?
They reveal several key energetic elements. First, every living creature on Earth has a matrix.
A matrix, like a blueprint.
Exactly. A specific energetic pattern responsible for shaping the energy flows, both inside and outside the cocoon, that energy field. And this matrix is unique for each species, an elephant matrix, a whale matrix, a human matrix. It defines the form.
Okay, so the species blueprint. What else?
Also, parts of yourself, meaning your larger energetic self, your energy vortex, contribute energy. This vortex is described as having 16 individual awarenesses or aspects, and some of these contribute their energy to the developing being.
So it's not just biology, it's an energetic matrix plus contributions from our own larger self. A multidimensional event.
That's the picture painted, yes.
So what does all this mean for us, like practically? How does this understanding help with the challenge of, well, the sources talk about impeccability. How do you strive continuously, stay on path without losing energy or purpose? It's hard.
It is hard. And the source is clear that just using mental concepts for impeccability, like just telling yourself to be impeccable, that won't last, it's not enough.
So what is needed?
What's needed is spirit, but spirit isn't some vague mystical image here. Spirit is defined as your double, your energetic counterpart.
Your double.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the double is, as the source says, your God, and also you are that double, How do you actually connect with it? How do you listen?
The source urges listening to the quiet voice of the double. It's not usually loud or dramatic, and the speaker in the source shares this really powerful personal story about resisting that guidance for a long time, using more conventional life, wanting to be successful and loved in the ordinary sense.
But the doubles didn't let him.
No. He describes being constantly forced back onto the path through painful experiences, through losses, even receiving concrete commands in altered states. He even recounts this profound out-of-body experience when he was young that just completely shifted his perspective, forced him to reconsider everything.
It sounds like a difficult process.
Very. He compares it to Castaneda's concept of magical kernels, these fundamental rules or commands you receive directly from force or spirit. The takeaway is, accepting the double's orders, even when they seem painful or disruptive in the short term, actually makes life easier in the long run. Resistance. Well, resistance can be fatal, energetically or even physically, according to the source.
Aligning with that deeper purpose,
Yeah,
even when it's hard.
exactly.
So as we start to wrap up, the sources offer some really powerful advice for your own dreaming and awareness for the listener. These incredible concepts we've discussed,
Yeah.
they aren't just abstract ideas out there. They're described as your possibilities, things you can potentially access.
Yeah, and a key piece of advice is to actively seek unusual things in your dreams. Don't just settle for the mundane replays of daily life.
Like the exercise of finding hands in dreams. That's a common technique, right? To gain lucidity.
It is, and it's valuable. It helps gather dreaming awareness, helps you become conscious within the dream. But the source adds a crucial caution. Finding your hands is not a lifelong task. It's just one exercise.
Just one tool in the box.
Exactly. It's one way to feed your dreaming attention to strengthen it. But you wouldn't eat only cabbage your whole life, right?
Huh. Oh, probably not.
Well, your dreaming awareness needs diverse experiences too. It needs richer food than just looking for hands over and over.
Okay, so the call is clear then. Look for new possibilities in your dreams. Really exert the effort to find them.
Yeah, push the boundaries.
And let your awareness expand. Go beyond the familiar territory. Well, that was definitely a mind-expanding deep dive into primary darkness, these vast cosmic structures, cultivating awareness, and our own potential place within it all. From ancient mages just touching the edge of the void to these grand architects of consciousness like the chief laboratory assistant, we've really explored a universe that's, well, far stranger and more profound than we usually imagine.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? And it leaves an important question hanging there for you, the listener. If all light, everything we perceive, is somehow clothed in this primary darkness, and if our own awareness, your awareness, is tied into this universal process of creation and cultivation, what does that actually mean for how you see reality day to day? And maybe more practically, how might you begin to consciously feed your own dreaming awareness with new possibilities to look for those unusual things and maybe, just maybe, glimpse that creator potential within yourself?
Powerful questions to sit with. We really hope this deep dive has given you not just information, but maybe some new ways to perceive things, new questions to ask yourself, and just a sense of the incredible possibilities that seem to lie both within us and way beyond our known world. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep deep diving into the mysteries that surround us.